Victory Studios in downtown Little Rock, this is Capitol View.
And good Sunday morning to you. Welcome into Capitol View. I'm Jay Burr. Well, he's got his own slogan. It should be coined. It should be trademarked by now. But if you didn't know what I was talking about, he made his fame during the daily governor's COVID briefings. It is Andrew from AP. Andrew DeMillo joins us today to kind of, let's recap the year that was 2020, because it was something else to say the least. Obviously, COVID-19 kind of took, you know, the entire year for the most part. So let's kind of start with that here. You know, what did we make of just everything that has happened with it, from just the initial response to the evolution of the responses to kind of where we're at now?
Yeah, and it's, you know, it touched so many different parts of people's lives and society and news, you know, right, you know, everything from, you know, the schools to athletics to businesses, prison system. You know, really was just kind of, you know, touched every single person here, and we really saw, you know, kind of the politics of it, a lot coming in. Governor Hutchinson's been in a position where he's faced pushback from fellow Republicans over some of the restrictions that have been put in. At the same time, been facing criticism elsewhere from, you know, teachers groups, from some doctors groups, for not going far enough. And we've kind of seen the state's response kind of evolve over time. And it's really something where it's dominated the news, and it's very clear that heading into next year, it's going to continue, especially at the, you know, the current situation we're at now, where we're seeing a record spike in hospitalizations and deaths, and a lot of concern about this really overwhelming the healthcare system here.
One thing that I know that Governor Hutchinson has made clear throughout the year really was his response to it was very targeted. You know, he really tried to defend that stance and that method of attacking this virus. Not similar to what we've seen in some states where, you know, things are just wide open, like we saw in Florida, and then you have sort of the opposite of some of the more restrictive lockdowns that we've seen in California. You know, how did he compare with maybe some of the other states in the surrounding area? Because he did seem very targeted in how he wanted to go about it in order to keep the economy moving as much as it could, especially in a smaller rural state.
You know, you saw him, you know, especially compared to some other Southern Republican governors, go a little bit further in terms of the restrictions. At least initially, especially on mask mandate, he went the direction of mask mandate before you saw some other Republican governors in the region. But you also saw him really resisting and continuing to resist going further in terms of business restrictions, and in terms of closing businesses again. We had some of the initial closure at the beginning of the pandemic, but when you saw groups, including the White House Coronavirus Task Force, urging closures of bars and kind of going back on, rolling back on some of these reopenings, he's been really reluctant on that. And you know, he's kind of made it clear that he doesn't want to go that path. And that's something where, you know, we're going to kind of watch to see what happens heading into the next year with these cases. You know, is it going to be more difficult to hold on to that position?
In terms of heading into next year, obviously the big thing will be the vaccine. Has there been any talk, that, at least from what you've heard of, on who are some of those groups of people that are going to be in that next tiers down the line? I mean, obviously, a lot of banter been talked about. You know, teachers, first responders are on that list, grocery store employees. But you know, whenever the topic of essential workers comes up, it seems to be every industry can kind of make themselves fairly essential. So, you know, what are you thinking, or what have you heard so far in terms of those next couple of tiers when it comes to vaccine rollout?
You know, whenever we ask the state about it, you know, they keep talking about how their focus right now is that first tier. You know, the healthcare workers, long-term care facilities, you know, the workers and residents. And we've seen the draft from last year on distribution, and it is a mix, and it's kind of gets into the discussion of what do you consider an essential employee, and there are a lot of groups in there, and so it's kind of trying to figure out who's next in line. And I think we'll get a better idea of that heading into January at the beginning of the year, as you see more of the front line getting vaccination and making sure that there is enough for them early on.
Now, there were some other things that did happen this past year. Obviously, the elections, one of the big things here. Let's focus on the Supreme Court for just a moment here. As Barbara Webb, winning that seat there in the Supreme Court, kind of further pushing things to a more conservative. I know there's not the necessarily the partisan labels on there, but it tends to err a little Republican, if you will. What do we make of that kind of going forward?
It definitely does push the court a little bit further to the right, and that's going to be a big issue, especially when you see the court taking on more issues like ballot initiatives. That's been where you've seen the court kind of having its biggest impact, and also when looking at tort reform type issues, that there's been a big push by the legislature to have some kind of so-called tort reform, and her race it kind of followed the trend of what we've seen in recent years, but a little more low key. It still kind of took on a little bit of a political edge. Given her connections, her husband Doyle is the outgoing GOP chairman. She had support from top GOP figures. She had a Republican State Leadership Committee, which has played pretty heavily in Arkansas's races. Also running ads and doing some things on her behalf. But it was, like I said, it was a little more low-key than what we've seen in previous years, where you didn't have the TV ads kind of all over the place. You didn't have the same type of attack mailers coming in, but you still had that. It's a nonpartisan seat, but it still had a partisan flavor to it.
Absolutely here. We're gonna hit pause here real quick. We're gonna take a quick break here, but we're gonna have more on the Arkansas elections because we have plenty to get to. Andrew DeMillo with the AP is gonna stick around with us for another block here as we continue to look back at 2020. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
It's our half-off after Christmas sale at Family Leisure.
Huge savings on pool tables and shuffleboards. Game tables from $99. Theater and massage chairs are priced to move. Spas at unbeatable prices. Going on now at Family Leisure.
Royal Home Improvement has over 26,000 satisfied customers. You can count on us to do the right thing and put the right product on your home. Don't worry about that old roof again this winter. Get a Royal Metal roof, the last roof you'll ever need. And we make it easy. All you got to do is check out our roof visualizer. It lets you see what styles are available for your home before you buy. You'll love the color options and the way it looks. It's simple. Just go to royalwindows.com. Call Royal Home Improvement today about a metal roof. Remember, here at Royal, we manufacture, install, and guarantee your own metal roofing systems. In fact, your metal roof may qualify for a discount on your homeowner's insurance. Give us a call today to take advantage of $149 down, $149 a month on a new metal roof from Royal with your good credit. And if you call today, we have a nice gift for you. $25 Walmart gift card with your in-home estimate. Check us out at royalwindows.com.
Interstate Battery has a battery for your every need. Our friendly, knowledgeable staff is located at 2020 Landtrip Road, right off 167 in Sherwood. It all starts with an Interstate Battery.
See ya, 2020.
We made it. We made it
through another one. Next, live, the new Bachelor, Lisa Edelstein, and it's Diet Week.
We'll miss you, 2020. Not really.
Monday at 11 on KARK4.
It's our half-off after Christmas sale at Family Leisure.
Huge savings on swimming pools, bully trampolines, in-stock and incoming patio furniture, and spas and swim spas at unbeatable prices. Hot deals on these items too. Half off after Christmas sale going on now at Family Leisure.
We're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back into Capitol View. Looking back at the year that was 2020 with Andrew from AP joining us here. We were talking elections going into the break. Let's kind of stick with that here because I think one big election here was obviously the French Hill Joyce Elliott race. Obviously, that one kind of took over, not just here in Arkansas, but it was one of the bigger races in the country. But come election night, it did not really have that closeness that was really hyped up to going into that race. Kind of what did you make of that when you actually came away with the before and the after of that race?
This was a race that, heading into it, the polling on the ground, when you look at the advertising, it had the feel of a race that was neck and neck. And Democrats, including national Democrats, were really pointing to this as one of their best chances to flip a Republican-held seat. And like you said, it didn't come to that. And this is the third time in the past decade where you've had Democrats point to a candidate in this race and say they've got a chance of reclaiming the seat, and it just didn't happen. And so I think there's going to be a lot of questions about what can be done in that. Is that is it as prime a target as they think it is? But it really didn't. Congressman Hill, in the days leading up to the election, he had a lot of events that he was doing with top Republican figures that may have really helped turn out the vote, plus the support for Trump. And Elliott, she really kind of came on strong really early on, but just there weren't the numbers there. You really have to have a really large turnout in Pulaski County to really make things work in that district. So, kind of going forward, the question is going to be, what other candidate, if any, is there who could make that a competitive seat, or is it going to be viewed as a competitive seat in the future?
And I guess with that in mind, kind of the looking forward ahead, obviously we've got a few candidates already in the bag for governor. And as you know, the next, now granted we're looking 2 years ahead now here, but this is kind of the last go around for Governor Hutchinson, Attorney General Leslie Rutledge, and Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin. Several other congressional offices also up. Are we going to start to see more people sort of come out the woodwork, if you will, to start announcing for a lot of these seats? Because we've already got 2 for governor, and we're sure there's going to be a few more.
Yeah, we've already got Tim Griffin, Lieutenant Governor, who had announced actually I think in 2019. And this year we had Attorney General Rutledge announcing her bid. Both of them expected candidates. The big questions now are going to be, Sarah Sanders, the former White House press secretary, daughter of Mike Huckabee, who seems to be heading in that direction. Come back to Arkansas, had kind of made the rounds at different Republican events. And is widely expected to, and it seems like a lot of people are thinking the question is not if, but a matter of when with her. And if she got in there, you've got not just a big figure in the state, a national figure in this race that could really shake it up. The other question is outgoing Senate President Jim Hendren, who is also the governor's nephew. He's kind of hinted at the possibility of him running too, and the kind of question of heading into next year, which do they get in, and what happens? You're looking at the possibility of a very crowded and likely very expensive Republican race. And on the other side, Democrats, you don't have anyone who's announced, anyone who's really making rumblings. And looking at how the races here have gone, trying to figure out who would be a strong candidate for Democrats in a statewide race, and that's kind of the big question is who do they have on the bench? What is their bench right now?
Exactly. Also kind of looking ahead, too, here, Tom Cotton, his name has been popping up as a potential presidential candidate, cut from a lot of that same cloth as we see with President Trump. To me, he kind of lacks the charisma to be able to really take a hold of a party, but he does have that strong belief that really does appeal to a lot of the GOP base. What can we expect maybe in terms of possible move making or just getting your name out there in terms of Senator Cotton this next year?
I think we're already seeing some of it already, especially with the Georgia Senate races. He has been player in that, campaigning and speaking on behalf of the Republicans there, and he was in the good position for him this year of not having a Democratic challenger, having a Libertarian run against him, and having a large amount of money. He was able to use some of his resources to help Republicans in other states, particularly battleground states. And it really, his race this year really was a good opportunity for him to lay the groundwork for a potential presidential race. He's already high profile. I expect we'll see him keeping that profile up, helping Republicans in other states where he can, kind of building up that support. And kind of the question is, who else ends up running, who gets in first, and kind of where does he fit in on that? But I think we'll see kind of very similar moves to what we've seen already this year.
And I guess quickly here, as we're kind of bumping up on time here, obviously you and me are going to be knee deep in some general session as we get up ready here in the next couple of weeks here. What can we expect here from the early ons there? Because I know redistricting is going to be one of the big things that we're going to see coming out of this general session.
Yeah, I think redistricting is going to be one of the big issues. You've got Republicans who are in control of the legislature, and so they'll be controlling the congressional redistricting process, kind of seeing, is there going to be any kind of divisions within the party on how to redraw these lines and keep them safe for the four congressmen here. I think that'll be an issue we'll see. It'll probably be later on in the session. We've got expecting a relatively big fight with the hate crimes legislation that the governor supports and he's been talking about for a while. I think you're going to see some pushback from fellow Republicans over that issue, and so I think that's going to be a big thing to watch. And also, just COVID in general, I think is going to be an issue. Not just the logistics, but also the policy. We've seen some of that in terms of the pushback that the governor's had from fellow Republicans over emergency powers, and so I think you may see some discussion of that, of possibly scaling back those powers or scaling back the emergency declaration. We kind of got a hint of that when the governor had asked the House and Senate to meet by the end of the year. They said that can wait until next year's session. Oh,
cannot wait for that session. I know we'll be tag teaming that thing in some form or fashion. Andrew DeMillo, he's Andrew with AP. We always appreciate the time, brother, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Absolutely. You too. Well, coming up, local lawmakers share their New Year's resolutions for 2021. Feels good to say that. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
You know every tear, every smile, every heartbeat. You have watched them grow, and you have become closer with every moment. At HealthMart, we understand. We know you and your family and your healthcare history. We know our community because we are locally owned and operated. Pharmacists you know, trust, and who know you by name. HealthMart Pharmacy, caring for you and about you.
It's our half-off after Christmas sale at Family Leisure.
You've taken care of the family. Now, how about a gift for yourself? Up to half off on display models, closeouts, even new items. Save hundreds, even thousands on a new pool. Fully the best trampolines on the planet, in stock and on sale now. Patio furniture, closeouts, and new collections are priced to move. Check out our huge selection of spas and swim spas. Keep the kids active next summer with a new swing set. Hot deals on these great items as well.
Half-off after Christmas sale going on now at Family Leisure.
First Community Bank wants to show our respect and appreciation for heroes, so we're introducing the Hero Rewards Club. This is a free rewards bundle for our community heroes. Active military, veterans, educators, firefighters, law enforcement officers, and EMTs can add the Hero Rewards to any new or existing checking account for free. For more information on the Hero Rewards Club, visit firstcommunity.net or any of our locations. First Community Bank, where community comes first.
If you've been badly injured in an accident caused by a big truck, you need the Duncan firm. We know the laws regulating big trucks. We're lawyers with real courtroom experience, and we get real results. We've recently won big truck cases resulting in a $17 million verdict and settlements of $14 million and $6 million. Don't settle for less than you need, and don't settle for just any law firm. Get the right lawyers for your case. Call Duncan Firm now at 8776-DUNCAN or visit DuncanFirm.com.
I'm Thomas Blackman with Blackman Auctions. I get a lot of phone calls from customers wanting to sell real estate, and the number one question I get is, why should I use an auction instead of a traditional listing? The quick answer is they're extremely efficient and targeted. We market your property, we organize your property, we sell your property in 30 days, and close in 30 days. No contingencies, no fine print. That's the short explanation. If you want the long answer, you call me at the number on the screen. Let me tell you about the benefits of auctioning your real estate. Since 1938, better auctions are Blackman Auctions.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back to Capitol View. Well, as we finally put this rather challenging 2020 year behind us, we reached out to some of our elected officials to see what they hope to accomplish come 2021.
Hi, this is Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin. 2020's been a tough year, but I'm optimistic about 2021. And my resolution for the new year is to stay laser focused on cutting unnecessary spending and lowering your taxes so we can grow jobs and compete. Have a happy and safe new year, and God bless you.
To say the least, 2020 has been more than a challenging year in so many different ways, but we look forward to the dawning of the new year, and with the Lord's blessing, pray that it will be prosperous and peaceful. Happy New Year.
This is State Representative Justin Boyd, here to wish you a Happy New Year. 2020 was a very challenging year for all of us, but there are some things that I learned to appreciate and I resolved to appreciate even more in 2021. 2020 was a time when I was able to spend more time at home with my family, and I just really look to 2021 to even further appreciate the ability to spend time with those I love and care about. And also, I was able to get outside, I was able to run, I was able to hunt, I was able to do things outdoors. And so 2021, I want to, again, appreciate living in Arkansas, the natural state, where we have all of these great outdoor opportunities. Then finally, to be an American and be able to go to the church of my choice. And so I just hope that all of us can look forward and resolve in 2021 to be thankful and appreciative of the many blessings we have in our lives and to be an American. Happy New Year.
Greetings, everyone. This is Congressman Bruce Westerman wishing you all a very happy new year. As 2020 comes to a close and we look forward to 2021, I know there's some things that I would like to see. I would like to see us be able to get back together as families and to fellowship. I want to be able to catch a lot of fish, shoot some turkeys, and I want to see the Razorbacks win at everything they play. I want to see Arkansas do well. I want to see our country do well, and I want to see us all join together and fight for those things that we hold dear, and look forward to a bright and happy future, COVID-free. God bless you.
Hi, I'm State Representative Stephen Meeks, and to say the year 2020 was a challenge would be an understatement. But through all the trials this year, I've seen many positives. I've seen neighbor helping neighbor in creative and innovative ways. I've seen communities rise up to support their small businesses. I've seen more people involved in the political process than ever before. And for the first time in a decade, we saw Americans launch astronauts from our own soil. Now, as we go into 2021, there will doubtless be more tough decisions that have to be made. And so I challenge myself and my fellow Arkansans to use your passions and God-given gifts for the benefits of others. For me, my passion is stargazing in space, so I'll look for ways that I can inspire the next generation of explorers. Maybe yours is woodworking or automotive, cooking, sewing, or maybe even just the ability to write a note of encouragement to a neighbor. But whatever your gifts are, I would encourage you to share them with our fellow Arkansans, and I know that together we'll make the year 2021 an even better year. So from my family to yours, I wish you a safe, healthy, and prosperous new year.
I'm Attorney General Leslie Rutledge. As we wrap up 2020, and it was such an incredibly challenging year for all Arkansans and Americans as we face the COVID-19 pandemic. We're going into 2021 with new hope, innovation, and to make Arkansas an even better place. As your Attorney General, I'm going to resolve to fight even harder for you. But I'm going to resolve to be an even better mom to Juliana because I love that little stink so much. I don't know if I can love her anymore, but I'm resolved to love her even more. And so 2021, we're ready for you. We are ready to put 2020 in the hindsight because 2020 is normally hindsight, but let's put it in the hindsight. God bless you all and Happy New Year.
Hello, Arkansas. I'm John Thurston, Secretary of State. 2020 has been a challenging year for all of us. And I guess the one thing I've learned from 2020 is that life is fragile. So my goal in 2021 is to live a life of less stress and kind of have more patience, not allow the small things to ruin my day. And so that's going to be my goal for 2021. Happy New Year and God bless.
Success Vision has great prices, and you get them the same day.
Same-day service.
Same-day service.
Buying my glasses was so easy.
I got 2 pairs of no lines for $99, and they were ready the same day.
The discount stores all said I had to wait days. I'm sorry, I just can't wait days for my glasses.
Being able to see is kind of important.
Success Vision had them for me the same day.
2 pairs for $39 in an hour for less. Come see us today, Success Vision Express.
It's our half-off after Christmas sale at Family Leisure.
Huge savings on pool tables and shuffleboards. Game tables from $99. Theater and massage chairs are priced to move. Spas at unbeatable prices. Going on now at Family Leisure.
Storms are coming through. Be ready. Really? That doesn't help. It's still going to rain tonight.
It's not magic. It's Chief Keith. Weather rates most accurate 8 years in a row. We're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And that is it for today's show. We're back with an all-new Capitol View next week. Make sure you get the Capitol View podcast, bam, wherever you consume your podcast. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you right back here on Sunday morning.